On number 14, it says solve the equation 5x minus 8y equals 16 for the variable y. So when it says solve, usually in our mind we think we need to come up with some number as an answer, but in this problem it's really more a matter of we're rearranging the equation so that it's solved for y. It's going to say y equals. Now it's kind of like, well, basically we're going to be using our equation solving skills to do this. This is kind of like this equation here. 5 minus 2y equals 8. So this is a two-step equation. We would notice to get rid of that 5 term, we would, first of all, we have to get rid of the 5 by subtracting 5 on both sides. We have to get rid of the minus 2 times the y by dividing by negative 2 on both sides. And we know in this case we want to subtract first. So let's do that. We get negative 2y equals negative, let's see, 8 and a minus, oh, I'm sorry. We're going to get 3 on the right there. So we'll divide each side by negative 2. We get y is equal to negative 3 halves. So in a problem like this, we get an answer that's a number. And again, in number 14, it's going to be a little different because we're not going to get a number. So let's go ahead and do that. It's, again, very similar to what we just did. Notice to get y by itself, we're going to need to get rid of that minus 8 by dividing. And the 5x term, we're going to have to get rid of that by subtracting. We always add or subtract first, so we'll subtract 5x on both sides. We get negative 8y is equal to 16 minus 5x. Now if you put the x term first, that's fine. And now to get rid of the minus, or the negative 8 times y, we'll do the opposite and divide by negative 8. And so we're going to get y equals 16 minus 5x over negative 8. Now, at this point, this answer is perfectly fine. However, later on we'll be simplifying this, and some of you may have done that. And if you do that, you would get y equals 5/8 x minus 2. Let's move on to number 15. So I want to remind you about the CSI thing that I talked about earlier. In this case, we do need to clear fractions. And the way we're going to do that is we multiply each side by 3. That's our only denominator here. So 3v on the left is what we're going to get. And on the right, when you multiply 3 times a third, you're going to get 1. They're reciprocals. Anytime you multiply reciprocals, you get 1. But anyway, so we're going to get 1 times bh, or just bh. And so now we're one step away of getting h by itself. We've got to get rid of that b. It's b times h, so we want to do the opposite and divide by b. And so notice the b's cancel. You're left with h is equal to 3v over b. And I'm going to just reverse the order, but really either way would be fine. Let's go ahead and move on to number 16. All right, so it says a rectangular field has a perimeter of 170 meters. If the length of the field is 5 meters less than twice the width, determine the dimensions of the field. So it'd be a really good idea to draw a picture here. This is a rectangular field. And remember, perimeter is distance around along the outside. Now, normally with this type of problem, it's pretty traditional to start by calling the width w. Normally the width is the shorter side. Of course, the width is the same on each side. Now notice here it says the length of the field is 5 meters less than twice the width. We can translate this. Length, we'll just use L. Is means equals, and then 5 meters less than twice the width. So you got to watch these less than statements. If we want 5 less than twice the width, let's start with twice the width, that's 2w, and subtract off 5. So that's how you would translate that phrase. So again, be careful with less than statements. And so instead of calling those other two sides our length, L, we're going to use w. So 2w minus 5 is how we would label that. And so now we're just using one variable. So you could just add up those 4 sides and set that equal to 170. I'm going to go ahead and use the formula. we know that the perimeter of a rectangle is equal to 2 times the width plus 2 times the length. In this case, the perimeter is 170. And our width is w, and so the 2w, we're just going to write 2w, 2 times the width, which we call w. Now the length we said is 2w minus 5, so we're going to replace L with 2w minus 5. And so this is the equation we have to solve in order to find the width. So let's see, we got some simplifying to do on the right side. We're going to need to distribute there. We get 4w minus 10. And now we got a couple of w terms we can combine together. Get 170 is 6w minus 10. This is a two-step equation, so we're going to want to, again, we're trying to get w by itself, so we got to get rid of that 6 and the 10. We're going to add 10 to both sides first. We get 180 is equal to 6w, and if you divide by 6, you get 30. So our width is 30. Now remember, the length is 2 times the width minus 5, so if we plug in 30, we get our length, which is 55. So it's always a good idea to make clear what your final answer is. They ask for the dimensions. The width is 30 meters, and the length is 55 meters. By the way, I want to mention with these word problems, you can easily check your answers. So notice if we take 2 widths and 2 lengths, that should add up to 170, and you can verify that that's true on your calculator. Let's look at number 17. It says John leaves Houston at 1 p.m. and drives 208 miles to San Antonio. What time should he arrive if he drives at an average rate of 64 miles per hour the entire trip? Well, this is what we use what I call the DIRT formula. D equals RT, or distance equals rate times time. The rate is your speed. Of course, time and distance I think is more straightforward. So in this problem, notice our distance is 208 miles, and our rate is 64 miles per hour. That's R. And notice it says, what time should he arrive? So we're looking for a time. Now, let's go ahead and solve this for t to start. So we're going to have to divide by 64 to get t by itself. And you should get 3.25. Now keep in mind that's 3 1/4 or 3 1/4 hours. 1/4 of an hour, that would be 15 minutes. Notice it says what time should he arrive. Well, he started at 1 p.m. and it takes him 3 1/4 hours. So adding 3 hours, that'd be 4 p.m. and then another 15 minutes, that's going to be 4:15. So be careful there. They are asking for an actual time, so you had to use your answer that you got to figure out what that time would be. Let's move on to number 18. So it says the cost of a graphing calculator, including 7.5% sales tax, is $90.73. What is the cost of the calculator before tax? So notice we're looking for the cost before tax. So let's use C. If you wanted to, you could use X or whatever letter you prefer. So the cost is what we're looking for. So first of all, we paid a total of $90.73. What's included in that? Well, first of all, the cost of the calculator. But we also have to pay the tax. Now remember, it's 7.5% sales tax. We're going to want to move our decimal to change this to a decimal number. So move that decimal to the left, you get 0.075. So your tax is 0.075 times the cost. Remember, your tax is always going to be, it's a percent of some number, in this case the cost. Alright, so this is equal to 90.73. And so we have 1C and 0.075C. Those are like terms. And we add there, we get 1.075C is equal to 90.73. And to get C by itself, we're going to have to divide each side by 1.075. And we're going to get 84.4. Now remember, this is a cost. So our answer here is 8440. And again, I want to remind you that it's quite easy to check your answer. If you take your cost plus the tax, that should equal 90.73. And if you check this, you can verify that that does work. All right, let's look at number 19. It says the volume of a rectangular solid has a length that is 2 feet less than the height. The width is 3 times the height. Write the product of the expression for the volume of the rectangular solid. So we have a lot to unpack here. First of all, the volume of a rectangular solid, that formula is V equals L times W times H. The volume is equal to the length times the width times the height. This is a three-dimensional figure like a box. Now it says the length is 2 feet less than the height, so we can say L equals H minus 2, or the 2 feet less than the height. It says the width is 3 times the height, so the width equals 3 times the height, or 3H. So now we need to write this product. Let's go ahead and substitute for L and W so that everything's going to be in terms of H. So L we said was H minus 2, W is 3H, and don't forget your H. And so it says find the product, so we actually need to multiply this together, or write the product. So notice 3H times H would be 3H squared, and we still got to multiply times the binomial H minus 2. So let's go ahead and distribute here. We get 3H cubed minus 6H squared. And so now we have an expression for the volume of this rectangular solid.